As Lebanon works to stabilize its southern border, Prime Minister Naguib Mikati is leading efforts to monitor the ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel. On November the 27th, a truce was established, but Israel's ongoing violations and delays in withdrawal remain significant challenges. Mikati has chaired a crucial meeting of a ceasefire monitoring committee, which includes international representatives from the United States, France, and the Lebanese army, to assess and monitor the ceasefire's progress. With Israeli forces still entrenched in southern Lebanon, the future of this ceasefire is uncertain. What are the challenges of implementing this truce, and what's the role of international actors, and how Lebanon ensures Israel's compliance with the agreement? Welcome to In Depth. Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Naguib Mikati has urged the committee responsible for overseeing the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah to exert pressure on Israel over its repeated violations of the truce agreement. According to the National, Mikati said the committee must ensure the withdrawal of Israeli forces from Lebanese territories in accordance with the ceasefire terms. Additionally, he accused Israel of stalling in implementing UN Security Resolution 1701, on which the truce is based. Mikati also said he requested a meeting with French and US officials to speed up Israel's withdrawal from Lebanese territories before the 60-day window, which ends on January the 26th. As Lebanon seeks to enforce the ceasefire, let's take a look at the terms of the truce implemented on November the 27th. Stay tuned. For more analysis, we're joined from Beirut by Iman Shweikh, which is a political researcher, along with Khalid Hamada, a strategic expert. Welcome. And we start off with Mr. Hamada. Lebanese Prime Minister Mikati recently chaired the meeting of the Ceasefire Monitoring Committee. How would you assess the current status of the ceasefire, especially in light of Israel's ongoing violations of the agreed terms?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, the ceasefire that has been announced with French and American brokerage is in fact an embodiment of a number of Security Council resolutions, 1701, 1559 and 1689. In fact, these are resolutions that don't just have to do with the stability in the south, but with the disarmament of all militia in South Lebanon. They all have to do with the demarcation of borders according to the Security Council resolution number 1680. In fact, the only two new provisions in this agreement is two technical matters. The first of which is the 60-day ultimatum for the Israeli withdrawal And the other thing is guaranteeing the right to Israel to intervene whenever they feel that their security is being jeopardized. And in fact, they could do that whenever they see Hezbollah trying to breach the ceasefire agreement or any of the other militia. And in fact, the provisions of the agreement are definitely going to revise the provisions of the agreement are going to definitely be revised by the Israeli occupation forces as well as by the Lebanese government. In fact, the agreement puts some commitments on the shoulders of the Lebanese state to disarm Hezbollah forces in the north of Litani. And in fact, if in fact, there is nebulousness still around this agreement. And even the meeting that was convened by the Prime Minister and that was attended by the representative of the UNIFIL, the United States and France and the Lebanese army. In fact, this meeting didn't really result in fruitful outcomes that can be executed on the ground. But I believe that there are still some conditions that have not been resolved that have to do not just with the withdrawal of Israel, but as well with the deceleration of the measures taken up by the Lebanese government. In fact, the committee doesn't have to do with the north of Litani, but still there are military camps in Litani that need to be resolved.
Ms. Shawikhi, Mikati has called for international community and the US and France especially to pressure Israel to accelerate its withdrawal from southern Lebanon. What specific actions can the international community take to ensure Israel adheres to the ceasefire agreement as soon as possible, as we're running out of time, as you can see?
Good afternoon for you and for all the people watching. Actually, I think it's very difficult to depend on those pressures, especially that Israel is having the initiative to do whatever it wants to do in order to protect itself according to the imbalanced agreement of 27 November. So what we're seeing now on the ground, that there's a delay of the withdrawal of the Israeli forces because actually Israel is the reason of this delay is that the Hezbollah is not responding to this agreement and to the terms of this agreement, especially the withdrawal of all the weapons and the Hezbollah military, everything related to the weapons to the north of Litani. So Israel considers that it has the right now to defend itself, and the committee.
Can I ask you a question here, please? Can I just ask you a question here, please?
Yes.
Do you see that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu himself wants to implement this ceasefire as the ongoings, as you witness all the ongoings all over the southern Lebanon and the Gaza Strip? Do you see him ready for a ceasefire?
In Gaza?
I'm not discussing Gaza, I'm discussing Lebanon.
We're actually in a ceasefire agreement, and we still have just 1 month to put the conclusion for this agreement, and especially that this is related to the start of the new president in the United States. So I think the current situation will remain as it is, and Israel consider that it has the right to do whatever it wants wants to do. But the concerns now from the military and the diplomatic authorities in Lebanon that there will be a resumption of the war and the fall of the truce, especially if Hezbollah will have the intention to reply to those violations, actually. So I think the responsibility now is on the government, which appears really weak in front of Israel and in front of the committee that doesn't do any logical steps to
do you mean the Lebanese government?
Army in this buffer zone, because there are some obstacles, especially of the capabilities of those Lebanese army forces that allow them to really be deployed in this buffer zone and to start really achieving the 27 November agreement.
Okay, Mr. Hameda, despite Israel's commitment to withdraw, violations also continue in the south and they never stop, including raising the Israeli flag in occupied territories and carrying out airstrikes. How do these actions undermine the truce, and what are the risks to Lebanon's security and stability?
In fact, we here have to go back to the verbatim of the agreement and the mandate of the committee that is going to observe the execution. But what is, in fact, quite strange, and you know, the Lebanese government is trying to observe as well what the committee is doing. What's quite strange is that there is no timeline assigned for the withdrawal of Israel from the occupied territories. There had to be as well some kind of a code of conduct or a code of engagement. And these kinds of codes needed to be annexed to the ceasefire agreement. And I believe the conduct of civilians inside of these areas should have been elaborated, and as well the arms that can be seized by the civilians and those that can be prohibited to be in custody of civilians. These matters are tricky and needed to be resolved in the agreement. I believe, in fact, and from my own expertise as a seasoned strategic expert that worked on the ground for so long, I find it quite strange that there is no code of engagement that is elaborated in an accurate manner in order to avoid any violations from any of the belligerent parties on the ground. In fact, there had to as well be controls that get executed in case any of the parties violate the provisions of the agreement. In fact, the statements of the Prime Minister are actually not clear at all and are just based on, aspirations as well. The committee as well didn't lay out clear controls or codes of engagement or codes of conduct.
So, sir, you think that the code of the engagement, no accurate code of engagement is the main problem? We move on to Mr. Shweikh. The Lebanese government has called for a trust fund with the help of international partners for reconstruction efforts. What challenges might Lebanon face in rebuilding?
Could you please repeat the question, because I was still hearing the interpreter voice?
Okay, the Lebanese government has called for a trust fund with the help of the international partners for reconstruction efforts. What challenges might Lebanon face in rebuilding, and is it possible?
I think there are plenty of challenges in this.
Can you mention the challenges, please?
Yeah, there are a lot of challenges in the rebuild process because we know that Iran was responsible and took the decision of the rebuild, but it's prevented from the US and from the committee specifically because there was a lot of fears of having infrastructure which will protect Hezbollah weapon stores. So now there is a lot of talks about the participation of Gulf countries, especially KSA and Qatar. But this will depend on the presidential elections because, as you know, we don't have a president for the third year, and we don't have a government, a real government that can take decisions.
So you mean presidential elections in Lebanon, Ms. Shawikh?
Depending on the 9th of next January and the success of the presidential elections, because it'll let Lebanon take such decisions and to solve the problem of more than 500,000 people lost their houses as a cause of the destructive war.
Okay, we move on to Mr. Hameda. Can you please provide an update on how the Lebanese army is progressing in its deployment and the challenges they face in maintaining security along the border, sir?
From means of mass media, and according to what we hear in mass media, is that the army is trying to partially deploy in Khiyam, a city in the south of Lebanon. But the Israeli occupation forces have not fully withdrew from the area. In fact, there are still searching going on for any kind of military belongings to the Israeli occupation forces. The Lebanese army, what I'm trying to say is that the Lebanese army is still looking for any remnants of Hezbollah martyrs or any of military objects left behind by the Israeli occupation forces. In fact, the 60-day window is nearing its end, and I believe that this mission should at least have been halfway accomplished. There has been engagement in some villages, the villages that didn't really witness direct combating between the Lebanese population and the Israeli occupation forces. But if we are talking about actual withdrawal of Israeli occupation forces, this is a tricky issue because villages like Mays al-Jabal and Idaisi are completely occupied by the Israeli occupation forces, as well areas like Hayt Maroun, all the way to Nakura, and even the Shama region.
Okay, sir. Ms. Shweikha, as the 60-day period for the Israeli withdrawal approaches its end, what factors will determine whether the ceasefire holds, and how can Lebanon and the international community ensure that Israel fulfills its obligations under the truce? And again, this Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wants this ceasefire imminent?
Yeah, actually, if we look at the neighbor countries, especially what happened in Syria and the end of Iranian control on the Middle East, it'll answer a lot of questions, and including your question. So I think in Lebanon, there's Israel is assured that Iran will not be anymore a threat by using the proxy Hezbollah. So that's why I think it's the interest of Benjamin Netanyahu is to end the war very soon in Lebanon and in Gaza as well, because everything is going to his interest. So I think the international community is working on this, especially that we've heard a lot about the new leader of Syria, Ahmed al-Shara, that he said we're not going to do any conflicts now or any kind of war with Israel. So it means that the new Middle East now is not as Israel was, but at least it's without the decision of Iran. So everything will be local actually, and the Lebanese decision is going to be much more local, and that will be much more comfortable to the security of the northern Israel and for Israel as well. But I think those steps, including the withdrawal of Israeli forces and the deployment of the army, will be finishing soon if really Hezbollah will obey what's written in the agreement and withdraw the weapons to the north Litani River. Otherwise, if things remains as it is and Hezbollah stay in the south of Litani, we will really have some scares and concerns that the truth will fall, and there will be like today, for example, it was the first time Israeli forces hit Baalbek, so this will issue some concerns about the truth. But I'm very optimistic that the war will really end in Lebanon for a really long time, unless Iran will support Hezbollah again by another means.
Yes, Ms. Shuweikh, this is the main question that I want to sorry to interrupt you, but this is the main question I want to ask you now. Why are you so pessimistic about Iran being weakened and Hezbollah being weakened? Why don't you think that their efforts and that they will face Israel and Hezbollah in the very near future? Why are you so pessimistic about Iran, especially and the changing of the map of the Middle East?
Well, actually, because most of the crisis and most of the problems that Lebanon faced, at least in the previous 20 years, were because the interference of Iran and using Lebanon as the background of Iran. So that's why it's very urgent for the Lebanese parties and for Hezbollah, because he's a political party as well, to get back to the country, to the Lebanese country, and to build the state of law without any interference of any country from outside the Lebanon, especially Iran. If you ask me about the role of United States, I know that it's really interfering, but the interference of United States is for the interest of Lebanon, but not for the interest of the U.S. So I think now it's something very local. It'll start by the presidential election, and the success of this process in order to build the state and to start to do some local agreements between all the political parties and to take their own decisions and to save the citizens that really suffered among 30
hopefully all the citizens everything will be back on track again. Mr. Hameda, Israel's continuous violations of the ceasefire agreement, including its ongoing presence in southern Lebanon, seem to undermine the truce. What do you believe is Israel's true intention in delaying its withdrawal from the region, considering I've been asking this question since the beginning of the episode?
أخرى هذا sorry. In fact, this agreement, if we are talking From the legal perspective, we have to abide by what the government has signed. In fact, if by violations we mean airspace violations and the existence of reconnaissance warplanes, this is something that needed to be resolved by the committee. Are the violations going to go on during the 60-day window assigned for the withdrawal? This is a major question, a major legal question that the committee needs to answer. In fact, as well regarding the bombing of different areas, who in fact identifies whether this is permissible for Israel to carry out within the 60-day window or not. In fact, this whole nebulous situation needs to be resolved by the committee, but unfortunately there is a lack of clarity from the end of the Lebanese government and from the end of the other institutions, the relevant institutions competent in this matter, and from as well the lack and there is a lack of an elaboration of an actual code of conduct or a code of engagement in
Sir,
the
all
region.
respect, of course, to your code of engagement, and we all wish, of course, this ceasefire imminent as soon as possible and implemented as soon as possible for the sake of Lebanon and the Lebanese people, and of course, on the other hand, in Gaza, of course, on the Gaza Strip. That was from Beirut, Iman Shweikh, a political researcher, and Khalid Hamada, a strategic expert. Thank you very much for both for your insights. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of In Depth. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.